Hello, and welcome to Unfiltered Eat Better, Think Better series. This is where we get real about our emotions, mindset, connection to food, and healing, and what it really takes to break free and feel good in your body and life again. I'm your host, Janie Shah, and in this series, I sit down with everyday people who face challenges with their health, body, their mind, their confidence, or long held beliefs that have held them back, and found powerful ways to rise and grow through it all. These are all real stories, no filters, no fluff, just raw conversations about what they struggled with, what actually helped, and how they created transformation from the inside out. So, whether you're on your own journey or just curious on what's possible, you are in the right place. Here's to eating better, thinking better, and living a phenomenal life. So, let's go. Today's conversation, we have Clare Knocker with us today. And I think this conversation is one that many people will recognize themselves in. So often we talk about health or weight. We hear stories of, dramatic transformations, the before and after moments, or like, the strict programs that people have been on, or the big turning points. But for almost everyone, that relationship with food is much messier than that before and after. It's emotional, it's social, it's cultural, and it's deeply tied to how we were raised and how we cope with life. And that's why I'm really excited to have Claire with us today, because Claire has spent many years reflecting on her own relationship with food, with weight, and her health. And not through just, that single breakthrough moment, but through slowly becoming more aware of how food is showing up in her life. So, Claire, thank you so much for being here and being open to exploring this with me.
Thanks, Jamie. It's good to be here.
Yeah. And you're from Australia. That's correct.
I
Yes.
am, yes. I'm in
One of my
in
favorite
Adelaide,
countries.
South Australia.
Amazing. So let's get started with this. When did you first start noticing that food played a bigger role in your life than just nourishment?
That would be, I mean, as a young adult, really. I mean, I grew up in a family where hospitality was really important and there was always food around. Like my mum was a fantastic cook and she was an amazing baker. And so there was always homemade cake, biscuit slices, um, and we lived very close to where we went to school. So, my friends quickly learned that, mum pretty well baked every day. So there was always going to be something on the kitchen bench after school. And so it was a magnet for friends as well. So um, there was, food was always around. Uh, and I also think from a pretty young age, probably in my teenage years, I developed a sort of body consciousness as well that um I wasn't skinny like other kids were skinny. If I look back now, I don't actually think I was overweight either. It's just I wasn't as skinny as the other kids. So um it would be from a young age, probably it was in my adult years and as I was busy juggling work and my own family, that's when I became aware of this almost kind of obsession with food about, it would be October and we'd start talking about who's going to host Christmas and what are we going to have for Christmas lunch or um and actually when I think about it now, there were like mum cooked every night. We never ate out, but we got to choose our birthday dinner, and that was a real highlight. Like that
Yeah.
so there was an importance placed on food. There was rituals around food. 6 o'clock every night was family dinner, and it was just not negotiable. You had to be there at 6 o'clock. You stayed at the table till you'd finished eating. So um, yeah, just always present.
Always present, yeah. And I feel like it's a real cultural thing as well. I mean, as you're speaking, I resonate so much with that because food was a huge part in our growing up, in our social lives, and in family gatherings, and still is today. Food plays a really big central role. And I wonder if sometimes yes, it's amazing we have those experiences around food. And then at the same time, it's like, well, sometimes those experiences is what's causing us to believe that we need to rely on food to meet all our needs, right? Of like that connection and comfort and love, and that's where it all comes from. So there's, and I'm not saying there's any good or bad or right or wrong, but it's so interesting to observe how food plays this really big role in our life from such a young age. And I want to just touch on this body consciousness that you mentioned in the teenage years.
Mm.
Because it's so interesting. When I look back at my photos as well, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was in such good shape. Why was I worrying at that time? When when you look back, and interestingly enough, even today there'll be times where I look back at maybe 2 years ago photos and I'm like, why didn't I appreciate where I was then? Why is it always that wherever
Yeah.
we are, it's always looking at, okay, the next thing, no, I'm not slim enough or toned enough or whatever it is. We're just always moving through those motions. Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I think part of that is definitely about the images that we see around us that society worships thinness, particularly for women. Um, I also think that we don't um, we don't have enough conversation around like bodies come in all shapes and sizes, and there's lots of things that determine the body shape that you have. And so, like even if I really worked at it, I don't have a frame that would be waif thin. Like I would never be someone with no waist and stick legs because even if I dropped all the fat on my body, because my
Yeah.
body's not built like that. And so I grew up in the era of I think the supermodels, and
Mm.
so I think there is that worship of that look. So if you don't look like that, then um you're not thin enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I was having a very interesting conversation with someone here in Kenya a few weeks ago, and it was so refreshing because actually, in some African cultures, shapely is seen as the more like the better body. I don't like using that word, but anyways, it was so nice to hear a refreshing perspective when I was working with a client, and she's like, "Listen, I don't want to actually lose a lot of weight. Like, I don't want to lose my shape. I just want to be healthier. I want to eat better." But she's like, if I start seeing that my hips are going down, she's like, we're going to need to have a conversation. And I was like, this is so refreshing to hear that, all shapes and sizes. We come in all
Yeah.
different shapes and sizes. I love that. I love that. I'm curious for you, was there a moment when you realized food was how you regulated your emotions?
Um, yes, I think the first realization of that for me was um, when when my marriage ended, and we my children were 7 and 9, and we moved into a time of shared parenting. So they would spend a week with me and a week with their dad. And even though their dad and I, we weren't at war, it was difficult to begin with, but then we did settle into a reasonable pattern. um I noticed at that time that both my children put on a lot of weight, and I did as well.
Mm.
And that was the first time that I really got this sense that, like, I'm just eating my way through this, and if I just keep eating, I'll be okay. And then the other thing was that it was the first time I noticed myself um, using food to soothe the emotional upheaval for my children.
Mm.
So there was lots of treats, and um, when they were arriving, because you had two transitions a week, so they'd come back, so they're transitioning back to mum's house. We're all getting used to each other again. They're missing dad, and then at the end of the week, there's the transition out. Like, so there was particularly for my daughter, like this, it would start, 24 to 48 hours before, just this anxiety build up about going. And so food became, a thing in that space that
Mhm.
um, we would use treats to navigate that. And then, uh, and I think once I'd observed that once, it then became clear to me over that period of my life. So it was as I was heading towards 40, my responsibilities at work were growing. I was moving into more senior leadership roles. I was juggling that stage of life where you've got, I was a single parent with young children. I had aging parents, so I was in a care role with them as well. Um, that that like I ate when I was tired, I ate when I was stressed. Um, I had a social circle where food like that had continued, like the social ritual of food had also continued to be a very big part of my life. And so, I ate to celebrate. And when one of the things through those years when my kids weren't with me, I hosted a lot of dinner parties and so food was present everywhere and it was the answer to everything. And that that would be the first time that I had this realization that that's what I'd grown up with, that food was the answer to everything.
Everything.
You know, just apply food, it will all be fine.
Yeah. What, when you began to see that pattern, what did it feel like to recognize that, wow, food is everything here and this is how we cope?
Um, Look, I think I was working with a counselor at the time, and so that was really my also my introduction to this idea of just um, of how addiction becomes something to block
Mm,
pain. And so I guess it was also that first thinking about food addiction. I was a smoker at the time as well. And so
okay.
it was, as long as you, as it, like, as long as you sort of mask things by eating, it's like you're pushing it down. Just push it down, push it down, push it down. Um, and I don't, I mean, I think I've probably, at the same time as, I think for most of my life, I've swung between, um, uh, uh, sort of, well, this is just the way life is, and this is the role that food has, to then, no, I've got to be more, pay attention to this, and I've got to try and be healthier, and I've got
Mm,
to lose weight. And I think it's important to say too, um, that my baseline food
mhm.
through my whole life has been healthy. Like mum, we weren't eating takeaway, we weren't eating deep fried food. It was good, really good quality home cooked food. Uh, so um, it it was it was not like a because sometimes if you read stuff about food, they say, well, cut out your orange juice and like your quick wins, cut out orange juice, cut out Coke, cut out takeaway. None of those
Yeah.
things were part of my life.
Yeah.
Um, it was just um, it was the very, very strong emotional attachment to food. Food was not about nutrition. It was not about fuel for living.
Yeah.
It was not about this is how much I need for the lifestyle that I have. And so what
Mm,
happened for me then through my 40s and into my 50s is that I've got a more stressful job. My work became completely sedentary. I'm aging. I'm moving into a different hormonal phase. And
mm.
so it became harder and harder to manage my weight. Like my weight just went up and up and up and up. And as it went up, it became harder to pull it back as well. So there was kind of a few things that all happened at the same realizations that happened at the same time.
Same time. Yeah. And one thing that I heard, which I thought was really interesting from Dr. Gabor Mate, is this idea of addiction. You mentioned that you were working with a counselor at the time and first now starting to realize this thing of food addiction. What I really like is how he actually helps us see that better, that instead of addiction, actually, what it is an adaptation. We have adapted to perhaps using smoking to help us with something else. We have adapted to use
Mm,
food to help us with something because there's this
I
really
like that.
negative, yeah, exactly. There's this very negative connotation around the word addiction, and it's not an addiction. We've just adapted. We adapted to use food to help us survive, to help us thrive, to help us feel connected or whatever it is. And so when we can look at it that way, then we can see, okay, cool. What is it helping me adapt towards? And how can I then look one step behind to help me in that space so that I don't need
Yeah,
to use food anymore?
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Where,
like that framing actually. It's good.
yeah. When you started to see this passion now, did you feel more compassionate towards yourself recognizing this, or did it make you feel more frustrated?
Um, Look, I think for a while it made me feel more frustrated
Mm.
and um I spent some years kind of looking for the magic bullet, like the
Right.
magic, because there's lots of things that get marketed. And enter by this stage social media. So then you've like peppered all the time with, this program, that approach, that uh I think the things that really switched on the self-compassion for me, one was that I stopped smoking. So I had hypnotherapy, and I read the How to Quit Smoking book, and so I understood that everything that I grew to understand about nicotine, I actually understood that sugar was working in me in the same way, and so I understood that it wasn't lack of willpower
Yeah.
on my part. And that was a really, really insignificant learning for me. And the other self-compassion moment for me was that um I was working with a naturopath and I had a great relationship with her and found it really helpful. She also used hypnotherapy in part of her as part of her practice, which really helped some of my um the one that really worked for me was she gave me a hypnotherapy track about fullness and not eating beyond fullness. And so I'd started to really make some progress there. And she had me on quite a strict eating routine
Yeah.
and with food types because she was also trying to help me deal with some perimenopause stuff as well. Um, but I just had a particularly long and stressful week, and I was sitting at the kitchen table on a Friday morning eating my breakfast, and I just started to cry because I thought, like, all I want is a piece of toast. I just want toast, and I'm not allowed to have toast.
Mm.
Um, and it's not like I just wanted a whole grain sourdough with just some Vegemite on it, which is almost a calorie free. Like it's
Yeah.
not it's not like I wanted a bacon sandwich. Um,
Yeah.
and I thought this and uh, and and I just thought this is not helpful. It's not
Okay.
helpful. because really um what my body really needed in that time was, some healthy carbohydrates.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's
And
insane.
so the compassion was able to, um, I was able to recognize that compassion from those moments too. That
Yeah,
what Because by that stage too, I had the understanding of what sugar is doing to us. I had the understanding of the sort of psychological impact of doing these kind of hard elimination
mm,
type responses. And I had the understanding about the emotional role of food in my life. So I had quite a few tools by then that I was
yeah.
able to piece together.
Yeah, I remember when you were sharing that story with me where I think, what was the breakfast you were supposed to have in that moment?
Uh, I can't remember, but
I feel like it was some kind of keto breakfast. It was like
it was a keto,
vegetarian
it
something
was an essentially keto plan that I was
at the
on.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I remember when you were describing this story to me, just hearing that, can I call it insanity of deprivation in those moments where it's like, we're being told only have this thing and this amount. That's it. Like, don't think of anything else. You're only allowed to have that. And in that one moment when you just needed something else for whatever was going on emotionally at that time, it's just so hard to think of ourselves as having to force ourselves into doing something without recognizing all the other layers that may be at play here. And emotions
Yeah.
is like, a big thing. And so I remember you describing that moment to me where you're just sitting there crying at your breakfast table and thinking like, oh my God, I'm like a grown adult here. I'm a 50-year-old. If I want a damn piece of toast with Vegemite on it, like, why can't I do that? And this is the thing with this whole diet industry and the whole strict rules and programs and things. And sometimes they work great for people, which is wonderful, right? Like some people operate in that space that I just need to be told what to do. Wonderful, that's great.
Yeah.
And some of us don't operate really well in that space. And that's why it's really important to recognize what is working for you and what is supporting you. And would you say it was in that moment that you realized, strict rules or regimes may not be the answer for you?
Yes, that was certainly the last time I um I worked with a program that was restrictive
Yeah.
around, like with the keto example. And so and I did one more program after that, which was actually much more about was an Australian CSIRO, which was much more about just a balanced um, approach to eating, and I kept the thing from the naturopath program about recognizing when I was full. So
Mm,
uh, and probably I think since 2022 was the first year that I got to the end of the year weighing the same as I'd started the year. I didn't gain weight in that year, and my weight has sort of, and that had been about uh, um, just I decided to try and um, really focus on the stress eating, and that when I'm stressed and tired and anxious, food is not the answer. Food's not going to fix it.
yeah,
And it was to acknowledge the stress, the tiredness, the anxiety, um,
yeah.
and and approach that in other ways.
In
Yeah.
other ways.
Uh,
Yeah.
but that was a really I think it goes back to that really it was a profound moment for me that I want toast.
Hmm.
Um So I think things did really change from there in terms of my thinking.
Yeah. Tell us more about that moment, though. What was happening emotionally for you in that moment?
Um, it was, uh, I think it was that, um, that thing that I'm not, it was the craziness of it that it wasn't even that I was craving something unhealthy. Um, it was, and just this sense of why would actually, it doesn't make sense to be depriving myself of this. Um,
Yeah.
and it was also, I think it was also a real sense of despair. It was like, actually, I can't do this. I can't follow this program. It's too hard. Um, it's too hard for me to follow. It's too hard in the context of my life.
Mm.
Uh, uh, I'm paying a lot of money to actually be miserable. Um,
Wow, yeah.
uh, it's not like the weight was falling off me, like it was, yeah, it was multiple things. Um, and I also, um, I also recognized that when I did those sort of really restrictive um, deprivation, there was always every single time there was a point where I cracked, and then there was just this, binge cycle. It wasn't just the toast; it was cake for morning tea, and you know,
Yeah.
lollies for lunch, and chocolate before bed. So um,
Yeah.
it was this kind of cycle that I just wasn't going to break. Yeah,
Yeah. Like a really harsh cycle, not only for the physical body, but emotionally as well.
yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, and I think what's so great, and thank you for sharing this, is that I'm so sure so many people have those thoughts in their mind as well. That why am I sitting here paying for something that's making me miserable and I'm not even getting the
yeah,
results, you know?
yeah,
And it's important to be able to acknowledge that so that you can now start being a bit kinder to yourself. And I think a lot of change, especially from what I've seen, starts with this foundation of self-compassion and
mm,
really understanding what's going on underneath the surface. What's that emotional layer that we can look at and support before we even start to say, okay, if we want to eat healthier, maybe we need to take a break from sugar, right? Because there's facts, right, that you understand that sugar maybe is not a great idea for us. And yet at the same time, if there's like an emotional pull towards wanting this thing, it becomes very difficult for us to say, okay, I'm not having sugar for 30 days. Because at some point we are going to crack because we're going to need it for that thing that we need it for. And I think
yeah,
for me, one of the biggest supports that has happened in helping me change this food journey of mine and help me to eat healthier without it feeling like deprivation is this awareness and really creating that awareness of the inner story that I have around food of when I'm craving comfort. In fact, just yesterday, I was like on day 2 of my period. I am trying this thing where I don't want to book meetings during my period because that's a time where you're not your most optimistic and best, and it's kind of like you want to be alone, rest, and release kind of things. But anyways, I happened to have booked 3 big meetings on that day. And I just remember thinking after the last meeting at 5 p.m., I came home and I was like, forget everything that I said about eating healthy today. I want a hot cup of tea. I want a piece of toast. And I want that biscuit on the side of it. And I did it. And it's okay because I was like, in this moment, I just need that comfort. And it's
yeah,
fine, it's fine. It's being able to recognize that that's where it's coming from and that's what you need. And now I've definitely learned next month, I'm not booking meetings during those 3 days, right? Because I'm not going to lead myself into that same position again. But we have these moments where these things happen. And when you can recognize what it is and what you need to support yourself, and not feel guilty about it after. That's really big, right? Like, don't feel guilty about it after so that we don't enter that cycle. That's when we can see
Yeah,
ourselves entering this sort of healthier relationship with ourselves and our food. And we're not going in huge ups and downs. We're just like, kind of riding the wave and learning and
yeah.
growing.
I mean, I think the thing for me too, Janie, is when you tell that story, I was laughing when you tell that story for many reasons, but
Mhm.
partly like for me also it's to say, like, have the biscuit on the side. You don't need to eat the whole packer over the course of the evening. Like,
Yeah.
just, have one or two biscuits. Um, and that was from those years of just shoveling it down, it's like I think I'm getting better at just like have a small amount. You don't need to have it all.
That's amazing
Yeah.
because
And
that's
then just
mindfulness.
enjoy it. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the other things that I think was really important for me was um, when I'd decided I couldn't do these really restrictive programs anymore. Like my GP had been talking with me about my weight, and they uh, they wanted me to have you can get a healthcare plan here where you'll get a package of like 5 subsidized sessions with a dietitian. And
Right.
so I'd started one of those, and I went to this session with the dietitian, and she came, and I'm not dissing dietitians. This was just not the right person for me. She sat down with a dinner plate and started to explain portion sizes and what my dinner plate should look like. And like I just wanted to say to her, I'm overweight. I'm not stupid. So, she didn't ask me anything about myself or about, and that was another moment for me where I came away from that appointment and thought, I don't actually need to outsource this because I actually I do. I really understand food and nutrition. I understand, like, I've had a lot of years of observing my own behaviors and looking at them from a physiological and an emotional and a psychological perspective. Um, I've just I just got to find a way to, work this out for myself. Um and it was in that time too that I sort of gave up on the um right, I'm gonna set a goal. I'm gonna lose 10 kilos in the next 10 weeks. So I sort of tried to get myself off all of those
Mm,
treadmills. Yeah.
yeah. Wow. What do you think in that appointment would have been more helpful for you from the dietitian's point of view? What would you have wanted?
Uh, I just think uh, something that well started with, tell me something about yourself, tell me something about, the sort of conversation we're having now, your relationship with food, tell me about your lifestyle, and let's, let's map out something where, across the course of a week or a month, you can um enjoy some of the things that you want to enjoy, learn to enjoy them in moderation, and have a sort of balanced and healthy diet. That might have been more helpful, I think.
True,
Yeah,
because when those questions are not asked initially about you and your lifestyle and what's going on, there's a lot that sort of gets missed in that conversation. In
that's right. That's right. And there is also, like I do, I've done a fair bit of reading and listening about sugar. I do understand the the damaging impact that has. I notice when I like last year I had um, about 10 weeks. So I really worked really hard on cutting out all of the sort of obvious sugar, like the, cake, chocolate, biscuits, that sort of. Um, and I just noticed the inflammation went down. My joints didn't hurt as much. I slept better. My skin looked better. My eyes, my eyes shone brighter. Um, I've been pretty focused on that this year as well, but just had a really social kind of 5 days. And I noticed instantly, like by Wednesday, I thought I just feel sludgy again. Like my energy's really low. I can, I could see the color in my face looks different. So um, I think some of that, that sort of education might have been helpful at that time as well. Like I knew the basics. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I also find just how you said it's really annoying that you assume that I don't know what's meant to be in my plate. And you think that I'm just not doing it because of a lack of willpower or discipline. And
Mm,
that's where I think the industry is really harsh on us, on people. That, I get it. I know what healthy eating is meant to be. I know ideally what needs to be on my plate and what I need to avoid. Please don't blame me for having no willpower, no discipline without understanding all the past experiences that I've had with food or that I've
mm,
had with myself that prevents me or makes it that much more challenging for me than somebody else to follow this plan.
yeah.
And that's where compassion really comes in for ourselves, but also I feel like just this having this conversation can bring it out to a wider audience to say, hey guys, listen, let's stop telling people that they're lazy or, oh my God, why can't you just do this? Why don't you have the discipline to do it? Without knowing and understanding what their story is. And that's, I think, something that I found challenging through my whole journey as well, right? Since I was a little kid, being bullied for being big, and then having that imprinted in my brain that no, I've got to be small. And then people telling me, like, why can't you just, like, if you know you need to lose weight, why don't you just do this? Sometimes it's just not that simple. Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more behind it. What do you wish the health industry understood about people struggling in weight?
Um, that it's not laziness, it's not willpower. Um, that it is it's highly personal. You gotta know um you gotta know, people's story, and you've got to understand the place that food has in their life.
Mm,
Um, and you've got to um uh, I think it has to be a tailored approach for different people to um
mm,
to really uh, understand what's going on. I think also to have that there's so much judgment and so much shame. Like I think that when people are in shame or a space of feeling not enough or not right, then it is actually hard to talk about it, or it's hard to get help. And so if you're in that space and you're met with judgment, or you're patronized or talked down to, it's not helpful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I actually see that in every one of my clients as well, is that belief of not enough always shows up when it comes to weight, our body, our food. There's that underlying belief of not enough. And that's where we can really start to do the work then, when we can start to reframe that and start to really build in the belief that no, you are enough, you are good enough just as you are. You also start to notice, for example, with the fullness, that you'd be full with just the right portion for you because I am good enough. I'm enough. I don't need to
Mm,
fill up from the outside to feel enough. And I think that's, if we can support the world with that belief, all these things could just become a bit easier to handle.
I think so. I think it is, I think it's tricky because also because like my focus now has switched much more to like being healthy and aging well. Uh,
Mm,
I also, and for me, being healthy and aging well means that I can't keep this excess weight on my skeletal frame because my joints will go. I won't, um, and so that I won't be as mobile as I want to be, and so
mm,
that's become a real motivator for me. And there's no question that like I feel better in myself as I lose weight. I feel more comfortable in my clothes. You talked about, I really understood what you said when you said like I don't feel like myself. And then
mm.
as you start to work this out, I get to feel more like myself. And I feel like I look better. And um so there are all those external image things, they're all hooked up in this as well.
Yeah.
Um uh but it yeah, I think the judgment thing is the big thing for me, that
Mm,
um we don't need to give it that external judgment because people are already doing that themselves
yeah,
internally. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. And as we start to wrap up this conversation, what are you finding most supportive for yourself right now as you go towards this journey of aging well and being healthier? What's most supportive for you?
I found this really fantastic local trainer in my area. It's a gym, but it's very small group. So small group personal training, everyone's working on their own program, and then some small group classes. And a lot of the clients there are, people who've retired in their late 60s, some of them in their 70s. And I'm just inspired by how fit they are. And the first time I went, the things that they can do. This group of people that can get up off the floor without using their hands, like they're just straight up mobile. They're doing chin
Wow.
ups. Um, I feel really motivated by that. Ryan's a great trainer. The the community is incredibly friendly, and I love it. Like there's no
Yeah.
designer fitness wear, there's no mirrors, there's no photos, there's just uh and so that's really motivating me. I'm
Mm.
loving my training, and that makes me want to eat well.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, that's working really well. And I'm also like I just noticed, I'm really enjoying just watching my thought processes and disrupting them a bit. So, if I'm at a shared lunch and think, people have made stuff, I've got to eat it. I actually don't. I'm not responsible for, everyone's feelings around the lunch. I'm not responsible for the fact that someone's overcated.
Yeah.
Just eat enough and then leave it. And uh, I guess I'm enjoying, feeling pleased with myself that I can recognize those feelings and not have to act from that place. That I feel much more um I feel much more like, I'm in charge.
Yeah. I love that. You've empowered yourself right now, right? You've given yourself the tools that work for you, the awareness, the compassion. I love this training that you're going for. Building that sense of community is so important as well, and having people around you who are inspiring you in the supportive ways rather than shaming you. That's so
Yeah.
important to keep you motivated and
Yeah.
going. In fact, I've seen recently here in Kenya active aging classes, which I think are so great because, like you said, getting up from the floor without using your hands and stuff as you get older, it's even more important and exciting to be able to do that. So, yay for you! I'm excited for this next chapter of your life and what comes through with it. And just to touch on the last point that you mentioned as well, not eating for somebody else's sake, because I remember that was an important point you shared with me. Eating to be polite or eating so that somebody else doesn't feel offended. I love how you now say, I'm not responsible for that person's feelings or their over catering. When I'm
Yeah,
done, I'm done.
yeah, yeah,
That's a huge social point because so many of us don't like to say no, thank you, because we feel it will upset the other person, or it's rude to say no if you're at somebody else's house. And that's not the case. If you're polite,
yeah,
you're kind, you're honest, there's nothing wrong with saying no to dessert, you know.
exactly.
Yeah. Awesome, Claire. Thank you so much for being here and sharing openly with us. And there's a question I ask all my guests as we wrap up. And so that question is, if healing had a voice, what would it say to you today?
Um, Keep doing what you're doing.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Janie.
So if this conversation resonated with you, helped you, or made you feel seen, be sure to hit subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And come join our free Facebook community, Eat Better, Think Better. It's where these conversations continue and where you'll find real people walking the same path. If you're ready to go deeper in your own journey, whether it's healing your relationship with food, shifting your mindset, or breaking free from beliefs that are holding you back, you'll find more support, resources, and ways to work with me at www.eatbetterthinkbetter.com. So until next time, here's to eating better, thinking better, and living a phenomenal life. Let's go.